Hi, everyone. Welcome to Type Talks. Today we have ISFPs live, and feel free to ask your questions in the side chat over there. And so, Jason, would you like to tell us a bit about you?
Okay. My name's Jason. I'm 44 years old, married, have 5 children, live in the United States, and have been interested in personality theory for about a little over 10 years, I would say. And just happy to be here today.
Interesting. And Jamila?
Yes, I am Jamila. I am an ISFP in Myers-Briggs and Enneagram 4 in the Enneagram system. And I am from and in America right now, too.
Yippee. And Anne?
Hi, I'm Anne. I'm from the UK. I've been into personality type for a few years. I've literally thought I was all of the introvert and feeler types before, I got officially profiled as ISFP, and then it all kind of made sense. Just love personality types, so I'm doing profiler training. Advanced profiling with Personality Hacker, like me and Joyce are like peers on that. And I don't know, I can't think of any other things to say about myself right now. So yeah.
Yeah, and we did a profiling session right before this live Q&A, and Anne is really quick with wearing a dress right after that whole profiling session. So props to you.
Yeah, like 15 minutes ago, I was eating refried beans with like an old t-shirt on. So yeah.
Lovely. And Kurt?
Hi, I'm Kurt, also ISFP, obviously. I'm also an Enneagram 4, and I live in the States on the East Coast. So yeah.
Really amazing. And so Jason has a YouTube channel called My ISFP Journey. Feel free to check it out and show him some support, as well as Sheila too. She couldn't make it because of technical difficulties, but both these ISFPs have amazing YouTube channels that I'll link below. And so questions. Let's start off with Hans. How are you?
Well, I'm good. My husband and I, we actually just moved yesterday. We moved from Virginia to Georgia, and so we're just trying to get ourselves situated and just, begin this new journey of life and everything like that.
Really cool.
So not to get all deep right off the bat, but I'm curious actually if any of the other ISFPs, what's your relationship with this question? Because I feel like when people ask me, even though it's such a simple question or even in passing, I want to go inward and really analyze all of my emotions of what I'm actually feeling. And I feel like I can never just answer it quickly. And I really don't want to just give an untrue answer, especially if you're not great or whatever. Because it's complicated, feeling a lot of things all at once. So I actually have kind of a turbulent relationship with this question.
Yeah, I find a lot of FI users have a turbulent relationship with the question, how are you? They're kind of like, do you actually want to really know how I'm doing? It's like, I can describe to you and look inward and tell you my FI. Is that what you really want? It's kind of like, do I answer this question authentically or do I just answer it surfacely?
Yeah, exactly.
I used to say bad and not even necessarily mean it, but just to test if people actually paid attention. And 9 times out of 10, they didn't. They just wanted to ask the question just because that's the polite thing to do. And when people ask me, if people ask me oh, how was your weekend or something like that, I'm like, let me try to remember. Because I don't want it to be like, oh, it was good. But it's like, oh, my dog died and I just forgot. So I try to like remember everything that actually happened in the weekend so that I could be like, give an authentic answer.
For sure. How about Jason and Anne?
I like hate the hollow feeling that, like, you know, if you can tell people are just going through the motions by saying that, you're just like, ugh. Yeah, like, do you want to know? Like, you know, do I want to know about you in this situation? You're asking me, and I don't know. Yeah, I feel weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I've come to the place where I almost see this question as just a greeting. Like, it's not much more than hi to me, you know, because I don't know. It just seems like it's such a common thing that people say that it's hard to see it as anything more than just, hey, what's up? How's it going?
Yeah, I had people say it to me in an office, and I could tell that they were walking away and moving on to something else before the sentence had even come out of their mouth. So I just like, yeah, no.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, I think if I'm asking the question, then it's because I'm genuinely interested and I want to know, and maybe I've even like sensed that something's, you know, going on. And so I just wish it wasn't just a cultural thing, you know, where it has replaced, you know, or become like just a greeting. That's how I feel about it.
Mm-hmm. You wish the question had more genuineness to it, because it's kind of a phony question. And so Tiff, oh yeah, Jason, you go.
I was going to say, I think the sad thing about it is that there probably are times when people are being genuine, but because it has become just a cliche greeting, we may totally miss the fact that someone actually is trying to inquire about our overall well-being or care about us or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is it because the FI makes a snap judgment that they're probably asking it for a superficial, like, greeting type of way, and so it's harder if it actually isn't, and it's actually someone wanting to know, you might miss it because it's already like that immediate judgment has been placed on it. Maybe. And so
I have to think about that. It's a good question.
For sure. And so Tiff asks, are ISFPs motivated by creativity, success, or something else?
I would say I'm motivated, or I think probably all ISFPs are like motivated by whatever us as individuals are motivated by, like our own personal values and what we care about. I'm not going to say that like most ISFPs don't care about success or creativity or anything like that, but that's more of like the process to get to that is what motivates us to be creative or to be successful. It could be, I don't know, a plethora of things, whether it's like our religious beliefs, or it could be, you know, just our own personal values, or, you know, anything that is really personal to us that we want to put out in the external world.
Yes.
That could make us successful, or that could be in itself creative.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of creative, Jamila actually has a channel where she sings, and she is a very talented vocal artist. So if you want your ears to be blessed by the sounds of a beautiful goddess siren, go check out Jamila's channel, which I'll also link down below.
Yeah.
And so anyone else want to answer the question?
I was just thinking, like, I think even just our emotions can motivate us.
Yes.
You know, like suddenly you'll feel something and that motivates you to take action, whether it's creating something or it's just like, along with the whole like authenticity and genuineness of introverted feeling, you also want that to match what happens in the outer world, I feel like. You know, so like if someone walks by as a friend that I really care about them, I feel that emotion strongly, and then I want to take action. I want to go and give them a hug or something, you know? So that's my thought, was like emotion motivates.
Yeah, and that's where you see the FI alchemizing into the TE. So you want kind of the FI to translate into the TE.
I like that word, alchemizing.
Sounds like magic, because it is magic. FI users bring magic to the world. Like Jamila's singing is literally magic to your ears. And so, Anne, would you like to answer the question?
Yeah, I related to both of those, and yeah, like Jamila, you summed it up really well, because it's like, you know, like whatever is motivating you is like the thing. So I've been like, you know, in the world of work, in an office, like managing like a group of people, and at the start I was very passionate about it. I had a load of like, you know, what turned out to be kind of like dumb and short-sighted ideals. Like I was like, you know, I'm going to change the face of leadership, and it's going to be like where every individual counts, and, you know, this is going to be amazing. And then, yeah, reality kind of struck in. But when that was my thing, you know, I was really passionate about it. But as soon as, like, I don't know, like it got to the point where I've been doing it for too long, and it was a mixture of too much combined with like I wasn't interested anymore and it wasn't going the way I wanted. Yeah, like I don't care about that kind of career success thing anymore. Like it's completely flipped for me, because it was never the thing in the first place. It was like my interest in the thing that made it important and something I wanted to go for. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a really relatable statement. I was in management for a long time, and whenever I started out, I had very passionate ideas about, you know, what I was going to do within that organization. But I don't believe I've ever been motivated by success for the sake of success in itself. That was never terribly important to me. I think I've always been motivated by this idea of just wanting to make my little area of the world better, prettier, more aesthetically pleasing, more enjoyable for everyone that has to interact with it. And sometimes, you know, like in management, you just get kicked in the teeth a few times, and it's like, I've lost the drive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it shatters your FI idealism. So you tend to hear the word idealism associated with NF, but I would actually associate that more with FI. I think FI holds these values or these ideals really high, and it's very easy for them, like, because there's this way that things should be, or like the most beautiful state of things, and sometimes reality kind of makes it crash down. It crashes. And so I find FI to actually be the most idealistic function of them all. My opinion. Cool.
That seems reasonable.
And so Naisu asks, what do you pride yourself for as an individual, as an ISFP?
I think one thing I've learned to be proud of is being, you know, willing to sort of speak my truth when it's, you know, especially I suppose when it's an unpopular opinion. Yeah.
No, I actually second that. I was thinking about that the other day, because I'm more like soft spoken, and like when I say something that's really just like really blunt, and people are like surprised, but it's just funny because that's just how I see myself. It's just you might not hear it for whatever reason, and so I think that that's something that I'm proud of, is that I'm not really afraid to be honest with people. Obviously, you know, in a compassionate, loving way. But yeah, and like not really, yeah, just tell people kind of how it is, or like how I'm feeling, or, you know, the spectrum is wide. Like it could be advice that I'm giving them or whatever. But I think that that's something I pride myself for, as well as my creativity.
Beautiful. And so Kurt mentioned unpopular opinions. So the types that you'll hear unpopular opinions most from are the IPs. They're going to have, like, FI and TI DOMs will have a lot of unpopular opinions. For instance, a lot of FI users I know will the more mainstream something is, or the more popular something becomes, the more they don't want it sometimes. They're like, okay, everyone's kind of liking this thing because the spectrum of people like it. Now, it makes me want to like it less sometimes for some FI users. And I find it interesting. It's almost like you want to figure out how you feel about it on your own. You don't want someone influencing your emotions.
Definitely. Yeah.
And so anyone else want to answer?
Just like respecting individuality kind of thing. I didn't even realize it was a gift until like I learned about type, I guess, because if you've got FI in the first position, like half of it you don't even know you're doing. But I didn't realize that like before, and I know now that it's a gift to just like let people be themselves, you know, like you're not going to judge anybody else, and they, you know, they don't judge you kind of thing. There's that kind of like live and let live mentality. And yeah, the other thing as well, which again I didn't realize I was doing it, is there's like a kind of like vulnerability that's not like an FE openly expressive vulnerability, but a kind of like happy to show up imperfect just as you are. And other people have said that that makes them feel comfortable when I do that. And yeah, it was nice. It was nice to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna mention something similar about like when you show up with your authenticity. I feel like that creates like the path, or like makes it a safe place for everyone to feel comfortable doing that as well. So I think that's another thing that I enjoy about like ISFPs.
1000%.
I love how feelers use percentages like 1000%. Like a thinker would probably be like, that's not actually a percentage. That's actually happened to me before. So it's quite funny. And so Sarah asks, when can ISFPs feel deeply understood?
I don't think that I felt deeply understood probably until, I mean, my wife and I have been married almost 24 years, and maybe in the last 6 or 7 years, as we've delved much more deeply into my personality and her personality, and we believe she's an INFP, that has been an opportunity, I think, for both of us to really feel deeply understood, maybe for the first time in either of our lives. It just takes, it's hard to be that open. It takes a long time of somebody proving to you over and over again that they can be trusted with the knowledge of who you really are deep inside before you can let that out and feel understood.
Yeah. A narrative I hear from FI DOMs a lot is the burnt before story. So it's like at one point you did show someone a part of you and then you were burnt for it. And so now you're like, you know what? I'm going to back off, show less of myself. Anne has a story too about before she used to show her heart on her sleeve, but now she doesn't as much because jadedness of life itself.
Yeah, it's like not even like one time. I think yeah, so I'm definitely like more quiet and guarded now. But when I was little, I was very like wear your heart on your sleeve, and like I was just whatever I loved doing, whatever I was feeling, it was just all there. And I wasn't like necessarily intentionally telling people about it, but it was just coming out naturally kind of thing. And I'd realize, you know, that like people would like critique and analyze and dissect that, maybe talk about you behind your back kind of thing. And yeah, it was just like, yeah, that's where like the jaded feeling kind of came from. Yeah.
And I think it relates to what you were just saying, Joyce, that it doesn't even always have to be with or have to do with feeling jaded or have been jaded or whatever, but more so because we're so protective of our own identity as IFPs, where it's like, it doesn't have to even be attached to an experience. It's just like, I'm experiencing myself and I know how I feel about everything and I know who I am and I know that I think, because we can be wrong, but like I think if I show, not often, but if I show myself in this capacity or whatever, then like how do I know that this person, you know, can be trusted? Or even not even trusted in the terms of like may do something bad to us, but just trusted maybe as in like understand, because that also can sometimes feel like not helpful or, you know, kind of like a waste, as if I've expressed myself, but I can tell that you don't understand. Yeah, I feel like it takes a long time for any FI Dom to actually feel like they're understood. And sometimes I feel like IFPs are more understood than they realize when with people closest to them. But we just kind of already are like, nope, misunderstood all day, every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fascinating. FI is definitely attached to the identity piece. I had an FI Dom friend of mine. He wrote a poem, and it's kind of like when he shows you a poem, it's like showing you a part of him. And so if you reject the poem, it's kind of like you're rejecting him as a person. And so that can be intense if you see everything kind of in those terms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that was an excellent question from Sara. And I agree with what everyone said. And I was actually kind of like, wow, I don't even know like how can I feel deeply understood, because I feel like the closest that I've come to that has been when someone, it seems like they're actually paying attention to what I'm saying and they're like validating what I'm going through. And I've learned over time that, you know, you really can't just expect that everyone's going to understand, especially if they don't even have your functions, because they're not going to experience the world the same way as you. But yeah, there is something about, I'm assuming it's particularly FI and NI together, where you feel like you are able to deeply understand other people, especially in the emotional realm and the way that they think. And you don't often get that back from the world, I feel like. So yeah, it's a tough thing that you feel like you carry. At least I do. I feel like I carry that like feeling of misunderstood all the time.
Yeah, I definitely relate. And I want to piggyback off of what you said, that I feel like a lot of times we most feel, or at least me, I most feel deeply understood by people who I feel like I'm similar with. And so if I feel like we don't really have a lot in common, or even sometimes understanding type, it's like, I know you don't know where I'm coming from, then I'm not going to feel understood by you. But if I feel like we're similar in the way that we think, then even if, you know, you might not always know what to say or something like that, it's kind of like, okay, but I can just tell that there's something here.
That's beautiful. And so if you want to love your ISFP or FI Dom, show them attentiveness to what they value, because they create their values from within themselves. So it's self-created sense of values. And so a lot of people don't understand it because it's not mainstream. It's not like what everyone else values. So you actually have to pay attention to the individual to understand the FI user's values. Like you have to actually pay attention to them as a person. And a lot of people aren't willing to put in that work. And so you have these ISFPs feeling perpetually misunderstood. And so if you want to love your ISFP, show them attentiveness to their individuality, because the way that they see things is going to be a little different than other people, and they know that. And so if you're able to figure out what specifically makes them nuanced as a person, that's really lovely. Loving the intricacies of your ISFP. And so Katie asks, what is your opinion on science?
Your face, Jason. Well, for me,
that's a broad topic. Overall, I'm in favor of science. But,
yeah, I'm not a flat earther. Yeah.
For me, I'm mostly fascinated by science, but I'm not good at it. Like math and science in school, listen, that was not my forte. But like I said, with science, most of the time I was like, oh, that's cool, you know, the mitochondria, that's what's up. But, you know, in terms of application or deeply understanding it, yeah, you lost me.
I was having a conversation about well, I guess it wasn't about science so much, but it was about TI and TE, because they're like different forms of logic. And I think for like I've noticed in myself, and maybe SE also plays a role in this, it's like I don't have any issues with science. You know, I believe science, and but I think it's much easier to understand and to relate to when there are more concrete aspects of it. So like when the science is like theoretical, like I don't know, time travel, like, you know, there's like there's science about that. It's much harder for me to grasp it.
Yes.
And to even trust it, I would say, maybe. So it's like the more you can actually see and the more verifiable it is, it's just easier to like swallow and understand. But I think, you know, otherwise I feel kind of just like a respect for it in the same sense like you respect nature. It's just like it just is there.
I appreciate the fact that science can provide, like, as a person who, you know, favors sensing over intuition. I love the fact that science can provide like physical data and you know, give me things basically that whether I can literally grab hold of it or at least read it in a textbook, maybe with some pictures or something, or you know, a video is made, something like that, I can get my brain around it. But yeah, I agree with your comment in that when it gets too abstract or too theoretical, like, you know, I have never understood light or sound all that well, and I've put a little bit of effort into it, probably not an overwhelming amount, but it's just like I can't see it or touch it or feel it. So, I mean, I guess I can see light, but I can't see the concept. So I'm like, whatever, I give up. I'm just happy that I can see.
I feel like I want someone to like package the information nice and neatly for me, so it's like quick and easy to grasp and you know, interesting and stuff. So yeah, like I think when I was like researching like, you know, like plant-based diets and stuff like that, I came across like academic papers and it was just so much like, yeah, yeah, that sums it up. Yeah.
No, I will say I like dissecting the frogs and stuff like that. Like that's where I really enjoy science, when I can like engage with it in the physical realm, like Kurt and Jason were saying. But you know, the farther it is from my hands, the less I understand it. Therefore, the less I enjoy it. Therefore, the less I understand. I don't understand why you're telling me about it.
One quick note that something I've always been fascinated by is just how the heck do clouds hold the weight of so much water and they're floating in the air? It doesn't make any sense.
No, I literally think about that all the time when I'm looking at clouds. I'm like, wow, I know that there's a lot of people out here who understand what I'm looking at, and I just don't.
You see, Kurt right now is showing FI self-amusement. He finds something very funny, so he's just laughing about it. And so it's like an inside joke he has, and it's an FI thing apparently.
Oh my gosh, it's like I mean I enjoy it because I'm always laughing, but I hate it because everyone's always like, "What are you laughing at?" They always think you're laughing at them.
Yeah, and that's also another component of FI too, what Kurt just demonstrated. So he says, on one hand, it makes me laugh, but on one hand, I hate it. And so I find like FI users tend to layer emotions. So they'll go like, they'll meta-analyze their emotions. So it's like, well, I'm happy and laughing, but really I'm kind of angry about it too. And then I'm kind of sad in this way. And I'm like, very interesting, Kurt. Thank you for sharing that.
I was just thinking it would be so cool if you could like follow me around all day and analyze everything that I do and say and break it down, because you explain things really well. Like I love the way that you're able to like analyze and succinctly describe what's happening.
Like just following you around, yeah.
And here we have the ISFP in the wild.
Apparently, I'm Jane Goodall right now. And so, Naisu asks, what are common inferior TE issues you face? And so, Anne has provided me a few examples before. And she talked about how, I don't know if you want me to share this, I can cut this out too, if it's too much. You told me before about how you'll go to work, and if like your coworkers are like really pissing you off or it's a bad day, like you'll come home and kind of like say like things like I don't know how much you want to share, so I'm gonna let you share.
Yeah, so I just like open the box and go for it. Yeah, like if I've had like a really like bad day, like someone did something that really just like, you know, triggered that F5 thing, and like my like default reaction at work would be to like go quiet, but it would be in me boiling and boiling and boiling all day. So, you know, like if someone did something really offensive to me, so I used to manage a team, and sometimes like the team used to like kind of like, you know, try and manipulate me to get like something that they wanted or whatever. And if that was something that was like offensive to me in some way, yeah, I would like blow. So I'd be quiet all day, like get in the car, like race home, like in a rage. And yeah, say for example, like my husband's already home, you know, like the door would swing open, I'd chuck my handbag across the room. Yeah, and I'd just like blurt out something like, you know, so-and-so needs to die, or, you know, like I wish there were gun laws in the UK so I could just like go and take that office out. And before like I'd even finish saying it, you know, I'd be already like calming down. And then like once I calmed down, I'd feel like, I'd be like, yeah, I do not mean that at all. Like, why did I even say that? But like, yeah, it just like needed to come out kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is one manifestation of inferior TE. It can show itself in so many ways. I have an FI Dom friend, like when he'll have a bad day at work, he'll talk about cracking someone's neck, but he doesn't mean it. He's like the most, like he wouldn't hurt a fly, but he'll just say it to relieve the anger that's pent up inside. And so anyone else have examples of inferior TE in their lives?
I can relate to that completely. I've gone through that exact same experience more times in my life than I care to count. And what I realized personally was that I would come home and sometimes be hateful to my wife and children because I couldn't let that out throughout the day because I had to be professional. And now in my job that I'm currently in, I mean, I am still professional, but I try to find ways that I can sort of let that out throughout the day so that I'm not being rude to my family who had nothing to do with, you know, why I'm in this horrible mood.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Me?
I think. Oh, go ahead, Jamila. Sorry.
Oh, no. Okay, I'll go. For me, inferior TE shows up in unproductivity. I feel like in the last year, my like TE has improved greatly. But what? Hello.
I'm on my husband's iPad, but I don't know if it's any better. Is it any better?
Yeah.
We can hear you and see you.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, if I start like causing issues, I'll run away.
Hello, beautiful soul that is Sheila.
Hi guys. Sorry to crash the party late. Is that
It's great. It's a fabulous. Oh,
You look all festive.
that's an example of inferior TE too. Tech issues. I notice the FPs on my panels have the most tech issues out of all types. It's actually kind of funny.
No,
So,
I noticed that too.
Yeah, and so Jamila, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Oh yeah, I was just saying productivity, like ISFPs, we can just be really stuck and like, oh, you know, I want to achieve this in the world, or I want people to see me in this way. I want to show up in the world this way, but we're just like, but you know, I just hope they see it. I don't really know how to do it. I just hope that they get the vibe or whatever. And so I think that's a big TE thing. Yeah, that's like the main one I can think of.
So not always knowing the resources you need to accomplish the goal of expressing yourself.
Yeah, either not knowing the resources or not feeling like it.
Yeah. So it's sometimes hard for FI users to do things they're not feeling like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it was actually it was in the profiling session I did with my friend Jennifer, that is you were talking about earlier. She's an ESFP, so she has TE higher, and she was making a couple statements about how she's like, how could you have a dream and not go for it, you know? And I was like, I know how, because my TE is lower, and I'm not as like good at, you know, how to get to that. Like you mentioned the FI being the ideal earlier, so I think like sometimes we could see it, like we know what we know the ideal, but we don't know how to get there, and it is a frustration. And then I think also it's like kind of like what everyone else said. In that frustration, I think with inferior TE, it can show up as like, I'm going to try and force this thing to happen now. And like, you can come out as like, you know, an angry outburst or something to try and get to that place that you want, that you've just been frustrated because you're not as skilled at, you know, making happen what you want to happen.
Yeah, like you expect to jump the system. Like when you want to make it happen, it should just happen like that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And the inferior function will come out in spurts. So it won't always be there, but it'll come out like, whoop, I'm here. Nope, I'm not. Type of relationship, which is really well described by all of the ISFPs here. And so if you could fix one thing in the world, what would it be?
I just want everybody to be kind and respect each other. Like, is that too much to ask? And try to understand people's perspectives. And I think that's primarily what would help people be kinder to each other.
I agree with that 100%. I just don't understand the drive that people have to go through life like treading on other human beings. It just is strange to me. And I would love to see a world where people are just generally civil, humane, kind, reasonable, patient. Not that I always am, you know, I'm pointing four fingers back at myself, but nonetheless, that's what I would love to see different.
It's like the reward system's like upside down. Like, you know, it's more valuable to some people in the world to use like, you know, really cheap labor in Bangladesh to make clothes, for example. Like, you know, that's a metric of success. And yeah, just like, yeah, things like that, you know, like a piece of sacred land, like, I don't know, somewhere where an indigenous tribe is, like an animal's life, these things, like
Yes.
we all value them to a degree, but then like there's that thing that like they're worth more when they're like being exploited or dead or gone, and yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah, and I find with some of my FI Dom friends, the reason why they find it hard to tap into their TE too is because sometimes it'll cross an FI value of theirs. So for instance, Anne gave the example of, you know, sometimes to make a successful business, there will be people offering you, hey, you know what, you can get low discount shoes made if you just get them made in Bangladesh. But it's also in these worker conditions that are uncivilized and they're in unhumane conditions. And so although the quickest, most efficient TE route would be to go that route, your FI is in opposition. And so sometimes it's really easy to be in inaction because it's like if something's against your values, ultimately you have to honor that moral compass, that ethical GPS of yours.
Oh, that was so insightful. I definitely relate to that. And I feel like I wish more people like could see that, you know, and like understand that, because I feel like a lot of times people perceive me as like being lazy, and some people have even said that to me, you know, in different situations, but it's like they don't understand what's going on behind the surface.
And I'm really glad, Anne, that you mentioned, you know, you specifically mentioned land or animals, because, you know, kindness extends to all sorts of, you know, animate and inanimate, living and non-living things. I have one of my biggest pet peeves in life has always been vandalism. I'm like, why would you destroy something, you know, that is, it's beautiful or it's aesthetic or it provides some, you know, good benefit, and then somebody just comes along and wants to just make it look ugly or not work anymore. And you know, that living a life of just general kindness extends to everything that you interact with, not just human beings.
Yeah, it feels to me like you can never get away from it. So I have an iPhone, and that's probably been made by like slave labor, right? And you can't, it's everywhere kind of thing. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And so feel free to comment on any of the past topics too if you have thoughts on it. I'm just going to also go to Christian's comment, which is, which types do you relate to the most?
Oh, hey, Christian. How you doing? That's my friend. I would say I most relate to, honestly, 3 types come to mind. I would say INTJs, ESFPs, and INFPs.
Great stuff.
I would say definitely the IP types. I feel like there's usually some way, just because we're all like kind of more laid back in general, I think I find it easy to relate to them. But I agree, like INTJs, because we share a lot of the same functions, I usually get along really well with them. And ESFPs as well. So yeah. Also ENFPs, I feel like.
Just all types.
Yeah.
All the perceiving types.
I will say, just to make it a little more interesting, I have the most struggles with ESTPs for some reason.
Oh, that's really random.
Yeah. Well,
do you think it's because they come across superficially sometimes?
Well, I heard the theory, which is that your tertiary function, so like in this case, at ESTP, they have tertiary FE, that they would have like a blind spot to the opposite of that, which is FI.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like they have the hardest time seeing FI and valuing it naturally, I guess. I feel like I've encountered that a couple times. I'm sure there's ESTPs I would get along with really well. Actually, I do know some. So.
Yeah, I guess that's where the stereotype of ESTPs being morally questionable comes from. It's the blind spot FI. Not all. You'll meet very moral ESTPs as well. But I've also met the other kind as well, too, that I know in close quarters. And so with ISFPs, sometimes they'll relate to the INFP or the INFJ before they know that they're ISFP. So the most common mistypes for the ISFP personality is that they'll sometimes think that they're INFP through testing or INFJ. And it takes them a while to figure out, for some ISFPs, that they're actually an ISFP. Tends to be a roundabout journey. And so, Anne, what types do you relate the most to?
Joyce is being mean to me because Joyce knows that, like, I thought I was every single one of the feeler types apart from the FE dom at one point. No, Joyce. Yeah, it's crazy how like I relate to, like, one of my best friends is an ENTJ, and just having like the same functions but in the reverse order. It's crazy how like easy communication and stuff is between us, and how we get along. But yeah, I feel like most of the FI types I probably relate to the most. And then like the SI DOMs, probably the least. It's one of the reasons I thought I was an intuitive, was because my idea of a sensor was I had a lot of SI DOMs around me. And obviously it's completely different functions. So it's, no wonder I didn't relate to them.
Hey, Sheila. Can you hear us?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We'll see if the iPad doesn't die. So I'm sorry. I'm just like the total chaos monkey today.
No worries. It's nice to see your face, even if it's for a split second.
I know. I'm like, I put on the makeup and took a shower, got all ready, and I'm like, come on, I have to get on here.
Yay! Your effort paid off. And so, which types do you relate the most to, Sheila?
I would say probably feelers too. Like, I feel like I can be a little more like, you know, I guess, you know, like with when you're around a really high thinker, sometimes you feel like you have to put on that thinking cap a little easier so you don't sound dumb, or you know, that you can keep up pace, I guess. And so sometimes I just want to go to the feelings, you know, and so I guess probably feeler types in general, and just mostly kind people, you know, like if you're kind.
No!
Oh,
It's kind of serendipitous how she mentioned kindness, and we were just talking about kindness.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how about you, Jason?
I really enjoy being around ENFPs, although I don't know that I relate to them completely, but I like being around them. Relate to ESFPs, ISTPs, honestly. I mean, yeah, there's definitely some disconnect, you know, there, but I think it's just their seeming interest in the physical world, you know, that it fascinates me, but also their sort of like I have quite a few ISTPs very close to me, and their ability to understand the physical world, I guess, in a way that I really can't. You know, I'm more just I just want to enjoy it, but I do like hearing them kind of help me to understand it better. So I enjoy that. And I actually, this might be a little, maybe not a little odd, but a little odd. I have an ESTJ sister-in-law, and there are a lot of ways that I relate very closely to her. Other ways, not so much, but some ways, yeah.
Yeah. It's like when you share functions with someone, you can find a way to relate, especially if core values are there too, and you guys share similar values.
And of course,
And
I have
so-
to say I relate to INFPs because I'm married to one. So
Yeah, it's an obligation at this point for you to mention them.
no, but I really do actually relate to her in a lot of ways. But then, of course, there are a lot of variances there.
Mm-hmm. Cool stuff. And so Popa mentions, are you good at telling if someone is lying?
Not really.
You can tell if something's off rather than lying, I would say.
Yeah, I think I agree. I don't think I can confidently say I can tell when someone's lying, but I can tell, yeah, like you said, if something's off. And I feel like one of the superpowers for FI is not so much if information is false, but like if someone's personhood is false. That's more so. Oh, hey.
Sorry, I know I got booted out. I relocated to a charger anyway.
Welcome back. And so, are you good at telling if someone is lying, Kurt?
I believe that I am. Like, I feel like I can tell almost instantly when someone lies. I don't know where that comes from exactly, but I would say yes.
Cool stuff. And so the next question is from Hans, and he asks, how do you deal with anger? Is it easy for you to hold it back? When do you show volcano mode?
I feel like I'm not like naturally an angry person. And I also feel like I can kind of manage my anger pretty well, like by not changing the narrative, but like, let's say if someone cuts me off on the road or something, that might get me angry, but then I'll just imagine that it's like, what if that was like a family member or a friend, and that, or even myself, you know, like I make mistakes too. And so I kind of just reframe, and that like allows me to like manage the anger, or kind of just like get rid of it, I guess. And then is it easy to hold it back? I feel like you said something else, but maybe I'll come back if I remember.
Yeah, I was just asking about volcano mode. Like when you're angry, do you erupt, or is it shown in like a kind of leveled way?
Yeah, I would say I don't really have a volcano mode. Like it would, for me, even to get angry most of the time with somebody, it's like, it would have to be like just a repeated like offense over and over a long period of time, where they've kind of shown me that they're not really caring about my values or like honoring boundaries that I've set or something like that.
Yeah, if an ISFP is showing a strong amount of emotion and it seems disproportional to the actual situation, it's probably because it's been accumulating over time. So it's like you've been poking the bear, you've been going like poke, 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 and then at the 15th poke, they're like roar, and you're like, why did you just roar at me? I just poked you once, but you're not counting all the times you poked them before then. And so, yeah, cool stuff, Kurt. How about you, Anne? We talked about anger a bit earlier as well, about how you'll think about shooting people.
Save the planet, respect Indigenous people and land. Everybody, yeah, that's my stance. Yeah, that's the time that it mostly comes out for me. I get flashes of like irritation and impatience, like if someone's slowing me down on the road or like in the supermarket or something like that. But they're very like momentary, and it's not anger like what I mentioned before. But I would say I would almost always hold back. And if I got like an anger that was more like a justified, I don't know, like not like those explosive things that I mentioned, I guess I'd just want to go and process it, like rather than like let it out to the person that I'm angry about. Probably I'd go and figure it out within myself until I wasn't angry anymore, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever experience? Oh yeah.
Sorry. I think the poking the bear analogy is spot on for me. If I do have a volcano mode, although I've done a pretty good job over the last 5 or 6 years of learning to process anger on a more daily basis and not let it all come out at once. But that's very much how it is for me. Is I just whenever I see the same thing, you know, raking on me day after day after day or month after month, eventually it gets to the point where it just overflows. And then I usually say or do something, or historically would say or do something stupid that I would then regret. And I think it's that's helped me rein it in, is, you know, making a fool of myself or setting a bad example in front of my children of allowing anger to come out in an unhealthy way, that has helped me to say, you know, this is not how I want to be as a human being. But yeah, I definitely don't I don't get particularly angry over the little thing that happens in any given moment. It's a built up anger over a long period of time from the same thing happening over and over and over again.
Very fascinating. Do you ever experience an anger blackout? So I think you mentioned earlier about how sometimes when you're angry, you'll accidentally do or say things that you actually don't mean. And so that can sometimes happen, maybe a little bit.
For me, I don't know if I would classify it. I don't know if I would use those words anger blackout, but for me, I've had times in my life where like I knew I was in the process of doing and saying things that I didn't want to be doing or saying, and knew I was going to regret it. And yet for some reason just kept escalating it and being like, you know, inside I'm like, shut up. You're making a fool of yourself. You're saying things you don't believe, you know, but yet on I went. And then, you know, I find myself an hour later in front of, you know, whoever it was, my wife, my kids, coworker, whatever, saying, that was stupid. I'm really sorry. You know, I guess I could say I don't know why I said it, but the truth is somewhere deep inside, I think I do know why I said it, you know, just wish I hadn't and wish that I hadn't wanted to say it.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Jamila? You seem pretty chill.
Yeah, I don't really get angry like that. I get irritated, I get impatient, I get upset, but anger is not something that I'm super familiar with. If I get upset enough though, or maybe angry enough, for me, I just start crying. Like my body doesn't really know how to take anger. It just starts crying and it turns into sadness. But for stronger emotions like that, it kind of depends on the environment if I'm able to hold it back. Generally, I think I am, and I don't let it show, especially if I'm around. Like at work, I don't really usually consider myself close with my coworkers, so for me, it would be vulnerable for them to see that side of me. Like, you saw me act out of character. Like that's just a no-go. Or even, like I said, since I don't really get angry like that, you got me to the point of where I'm angry at you. Like that's just a lot for me. So yeah.
Hi, Sheila.
It's the last try.
You can keep trying. We don't mind. And so how do you deal with anger?
A lot like the rest. I have a whole video on my channel about anger, but yeah, I would explode because it's like poking the bear, like you said. I'll just, you know, I'm fine, you know, like I don't want to have to like put the energy into dealing with the emotions with other people, you know, while I'm feeling them. So I'll just suppress them and leave them and until they push way too far, and then I explode and I say things I don't mean, and then I have to take it all back. And once the shrapnel's been thrown out there, you know, like you can't take it back. So I've really learned to rein in that vicious tongue over the years, but it's taken quite a while. And it's just certain people that know how to push my buttons, aka my husband. Very few people see that rage.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating.
I have found that I will go, I apologize, there's a train track by my house, so if you hear the train, I'll mute it when I get done speaking until the train's going. I have found that I will go to great lengths to get away from people who are capable of pushing my buttons like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I will do pretty much whatever it takes. I mean, unless they really, really are important to me, I've rescheduled my entire work schedule at times to not have to be around people that will push my buttons like that. Because I don't want that to be a part of my identity, that I'm angry guy or something like that.
Yeah. Is that interesting? So you're kind of staying away from triggers that you know will make you angry. That's smart of you. Good on you. It also,
I want a peaceful life.
It also brings us to the FI repulsion switch. Do you ever get so angry or hurt or turned off or disgusted by someone that you kind of, like, you really like them at some point, and then at one point you kind of have a negative opinion about them now, and you're like, do you ever switch from idealizing someone to the opposite, so seeing them as someone who sucks?
Yeah,
I think I can have very black and white thinking sometimes. It's because I like it to be I like everything in my house and world and life to be kind of black or white, and I forget about all the gray, and so I have to learn to look at the gray. But I just like things simple, and I want to put the label on this and that, and so. Yeah, I definitely have had to learn to not be so black and white in my thinking.
You used the word. Sorry, Kurt, you can go. You're about to talk before.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just gonna add in that I've had those moments where your opinion will change a lot on somebody, and then I kind of feel almost like insecure about it, because it's like, was I just idealizing this person to a degree where I was like not willing to look at their flaws or something like that, you know? Or it steps into like a codependent place where you like, I mean, I don't know if other ISFPs relate, but like I kind of idealize the idea of having just like super close friends who really get me and really understand me and all that. And I've had experiences where I feel like I found people like that, but then it turns out that the reality of who they are kind of shatters that ideal. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah. An FI phrase is people are so much better in concept than in application.
Yeah, I wonder
so,
if we do idealize certain relationships and people and create this vision in our head of what we think they are and what they should be. And then when they show us their real self, we're disappointed, or at least for me. And I don't know if that's just part of the 4 in me, but yeah, it's like I'll just be, yeah, I do kind of will idealize certain situations, or like, you know, say we're even going to a vacation. I'll be like, oh, this is going to be the best vacation, and I'm like idealizing all these feelings that are going to come with it. And then when I get there and reality is there, I'm like, oh, this isn't what I thought I was going to feel, you know?
absolutely. That is totally an FI thing.
Mhm.
And so Sky, the ESFP, asks, what's your relationship with ESFPs? Of course, the ESFP asks about how you feel about them.
I love ESFPs. I think they're great. They're super fun. Especially if they're musical like I am. To me, they tend to be hilarious. Yeah, I think they're pretty cool.
Yeah, I feel like I've learned a lot from ESFPs. It's kind of interesting because you would think that FI DOMs would be like more comfortable, almost like living out their values all the time. But I feel like from watching ESFPs, they're much, to me, they seem much more comfortable. Like, this is a silly example, but just like, even like if you go to a restaurant and you don't get exactly what you ordered, they'll be like, that's not what I ordered, send that back. Like you know, whereas like I would feel, you know, not as comfortable doing that. But it's and I heard a phrase, like the ESFPs bring themselves wherever they go, and I feel like I admire that about them, and it almost even gives me more permission to be that way too, I guess.
Yeah, makes sense. And so we're on another set of questions. StreamYard refreshes the questions, so at a certain point, there's no choice of my own. Like I can't do anything about it. It'll just like skip a bunch of questions, and I'm so sorry. Forgive me, please. But this is our next question. Rainy Day commenter asks, do you lose your sense of self when you are in your FI, like singing, drawing, songwriting, etc., or whatever your creative outlet is?
No, I feel like I find myself more when I am in my creative element, because it's forcing me to look even deeper into myself than I normally do. Unless you mean like, do you lose your sense of self as in kind of like zoning out?
Mhm.
But yeah, I wouldn't call that losing sense of myself, more so just losing sense of like, I don't know, not even my environment, but just like super, you know, zoned in, I guess.
Yeah, I find like painting or something is like super NI for me, and I just zone out and go to like a whole other place where I'm just like, yeah, it's not like an FI thing for me, but like, yeah, kind of like what you said, Jamila, like with poetry for me, that's like exploring myself on another level kind of thing. So yeah, for me, I think it depends on what it is. Yeah, I can lose myself in films and stuff as well, like I'm merging with the characters in the film almost kind of thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm like that with painting. Also, it's or anything that I get really engrossed in. It's like it is like melding and merging, and you just want to become what you're doing. And so you kind of block out what's around you, and then like if anyone's bugging you or trying to get your attention while you're so in the zone, that's just like nails on a chalkboard for me. I'm like, no, I'm zoned in on here, but I don't lose myself, or I know where I am, but it's just like it'll get tunnel vision. I think that's the best way to explain it.
Yeah. Do you lose track of time when you're in your FI zone? Like suddenly you were doing it at 3 p.m. and then now it's 9 and you didn't know so much time passed you by.
Yeah, especially when I'm doing like a lot of SE stuff, like out in the garden. And it'll be like 5 hours and I'm like, oh, I haven't drank water, I haven't eaten, and all those things kind of just shut out. I don't even notice it. And then, my husband will come walking with water and be like, you thirsty? I'm like, oh, I'm so thirsty. And then all of a sudden, you're like, yeah, that happens.
Cool. Yeah. And so, a lot of people attribute intuitives being the one who loses track of their physical needs, like drinking or eating, but clearly anyone can do it too, right? And so Sheila mentioned that as well, especially when you're in your flow state. That's how you, like, if you stop eating or something, you know that you might like something or you might be engrossed in it. So awesome stuff. And so Jason, do you have an answer to this question, or would you like
thought Jamila's answer was perfect. I will just copy and paste because that's exactly, I couldn't say it any better.
That's beautiful. I love this ISFP solidarity going on. And so the next question is, what things can change your mind? How about, to ground it a little, what things in the past have changed your mind? So do you have a story or an example of a time where you believed in one thing, but then after some convincing, you actually believed in the other side?
I think that to change my mind, you have to give me examples of things. You can't just like, I don't know, just kind of just say these vague things and just expect me to agree with you. You have to like give me examples or like reasons as to why, it would be better for us to do Mexican tonight when I'm in the mood for Chinese. If you're like, so the Mexican closes at 9, Chinese closes at 8, and also they have great happy hour, then I'm like, oh, why didn't you just say that? But, other than that, I just want to do what I want to do. So, yes. Or, of course, if you give a type of reasoning that will appeal to like somebody else's feelings, taking somebody else's feelings into consideration, like, oh, we can't do Chinese because such and such is allergic to like, wasabi or something like that. Then I'm like, oh, true. Wasabi's out. We can go to Mexican.
Mm-hmm. Those are good tips. Give an ISFP examples or show them how it relates back to people and humans and emotions. That's convincing.
I think when it comes to like just what I like, you can't change my mind. But maybe my mind will get changed over time. Maybe I'll just change. But we were my family and we got donuts this morning. We were talking about something with donuts, and I was like, I just like that donut. I don't need. I'm like, I don't have any reasons. I don't know. It's just really good. I like it, and I don't care what donut you like. It doesn't matter. This is my donut, so leave me alone. But when it comes to like philosophical things or belief systems, things like that, I think the first thing is I really need to trust the person that I'm having that interaction with. That, you know, I believe that they have good intentions. I believe that they're concerned about me. I'm concerned about them. And then I think it takes a lot of experiential events to change my mind, you know, situations where I see practically in day-to-day life how what I've been thinking and how I've been living has not been consistent with what I believe to be right or good. And then I can begin to be like, wait a minute, I need to rethink some things here. And then if there's someone in my life that I trust that can help me think through those things, then that's really a help to me. But I've got to really trust somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so sensing functions will prioritize facts, proof, you know, showing actual examples or experiential things. So something in the real world that you can actually prove. Whereas for intuitive functions, maybe it's more easy to convince through theory, perhaps. Also, the stuff in the panel are just general human things as well, but we believe that the trend is more towards ISFP. So if you relate and you're not an ISFP, please don't write me an angry comment. Anyone can do anything. These are patterns, not rules. Yeah. And so, so anyone else would like to answer the question?
I've got like a weird angle for that one, like with something I did recently. So like I get like these emails from Greenpeace because I'm like, I like some things that like kind of trend lefty or whatever. And it was this email about like, so there's like obviously like a few like main supermarkets that are like the big brands in the UK. And they did a report, and the one that I shop at came out as the one that was apparently like using the most like soybeans sustained from like cutting down like the Amazon and like putting these like farms up and stuff. So I was like, oh, maybe I should like, you know, cut out that supermarket. And then I had a thought of like, because I didn't really want to do it because I was like, I'm gonna have to drive further away and all this stuff. But like, I was like, well, do you know what? If this supermarket is really like bad and far worse than the others, then I'm going to have to find a way to do it and make it work. So I decided, like, I don't normally do this, but I read the Greenpeace report for the first time myself, and it turned out that like it was basically like very clickbaity, trashing this one supermarket because the one that was like number 2 was only a tiny bit behind them. And then like some hadn't even responded to the poll where they were like, you know, asking them like, where do you source this from? Where do you source that from? And so on. So it was interesting because I went in like thinking, oh God, I might have to change my supermarket. And I just like took all the information and I was like, no, it's like all the same. So yeah, it was just interesting because I had one stance and then took another. And I guess to sum up the question, sometimes like I'll just go down like rabbit holes of like, you know, watching YouTube videos, reading different things. And sometimes I can feel that like I'm slowly shifting on where I stand on something maybe.
Yeah, so it's through the process of consuming. So it's your FI plus your SE, like your SE taking in these new pieces of information, and your FI is like, all right, I filtered it, approve, I like it. I mean, and then it goes in. Otherwise, for some people like Jason, it's kind of like it takes a little more to like. Some things are just things you like without needing a reason. So those are the things that you never need to be convinced on anyway. Awesome. And the next question by Vale is, which SE stereotypes do you not relate to? So we're actually planning to do a panel on this soon as well, because, you know, SE tends to get portrayed as bungee jumping, skydiving, doing something extremely life-threatening, but yeah, isn't it great that the near-death experience gives you life? Now, a majority of ISFPs don't relate to that. Most of them don't. They might do things like Sheila will mow her lawn a little differently each time. So, she'll go one path and then realize that if she does it the same way every time, it's boring. And so she might mix it up some. And so that's SC right there, novelty through experiences. And Anne, Anne over there, also, she experiences SE by throwing up like a piece of tape up and then trying to catch it like a bracelet. And you see, the risk-taking part is that it could fall on the floor. Like the tape could fall on the floor. So, and sometimes she eats hot food when it's too hot, and then she'll go like, ow, 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 okay, yum. So, SE, I'm so sorry if I'm embarrassing you. And so, SE can come out in a multitude of ways, and it doesn't have to be like an extreme example. It can be little things, like throwing something in the air and catching it too, or doing something a little differently than how you normally do it, shaking things up. Doesn't have to be an extreme example. And a lot of ISFPs relate more to their NI too. So you'll have Kurt here, who is, more FI-NI than FI-SE. And so you'll have him like also having a different variation of how he relates to his SE as well. But he's still an ISFP. And so I'll let the ISFPs speak. Thank you for attending my TED Talk.
Yeah, I was just going to throw on there, like, I think it's a stereotype in general that sensors don't like intuitive or abstract things. But I think definitely when you have a tertiary intuitive function, much more so, you could very easily relate to or enjoy abstract conversations and intuitive topics. So I think sometimes that's a stereotype just in general with if you're an SP type that you're not gonna enjoy those things, but I do.
That's true. My belief is that everyone enjoys deep conversation if you have it with them. Like, I have stayed up late, like at 3, 4 a.m. talking to ESFPs and ESTPs about, deep topics. And so it's more common for NI tertiaries to be more into it, but I'm just saying, like, in general, just because someone likes deep conversations doesn't automatically make them an intuitive. And it is a stereotype. It's more about intuition in the Jungian sense is more about speculation, things that you cannot prove, the unknowable, the unseeable, and how much you place weight and trust into that without needing direct sensory proof of that. And it's also like, do you like things even if they have no practical application to reality at all? And so those are typically more Jungian intuition type of terms too. I might be butchering it a lot, but that's just like a quick SparkNotes summary. And so anyone else want to explain their experience with SE?
I think some people like have a picture in their head of like SE as like any sort of like physical thing that you use your body with, like, be it like, like riding a bike, singing, dancing. If you've got SE high up, you'll just show up to all of them and instantly be good at them. And yeah, I don't relate to that. I relate to like a tiny bit, like there's some things that I've instinctively got, like cooking, for example. But like there's definitely things that I've tried, like and the first time I've tried them, I've been awful, like worse than like SI users. So yeah, that's a stereotype I don't relate to. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure some ISFPs might relate maybe to bruises too. So I know like bruises tend to be only attributed to inferior SE because only inferior SE gets hurt. I mean, there is truth to intuitives kind of being very clumsy, but I've heard a lot of sensors also call themselves clumsy as well. And it's almost like sometimes, I don't know, maybe Anne, you have some insight into this too. To pass the baton to you. Or
I'm not gonna say anything to you anymore, Joyce. No, I'm joking. Yeah, I related to, like, especially when I first got into type and I heard about the stereotype of inferior SE as being like, you know, INFJs walk around like tripping over their coffee table and stuff because they're so in their heads. Yeah, I've actually done that thing. Like, if something's on my mind and I'm processing it, like not outside of home, I'd say I pay attention more then. But yeah, sometimes I've caught my elbow on something or whatever, just because I've just been like more in my head than paying attention to what's going around. And then on the opposite, so my husband's INTJ, so SE inferior, and he doesn't do that. He pays attention to like make sure he's not catching his leg on the coffee table or whatever. Yeah,
it's fascinating. You even have an ESTP, like Kate from Type Match. She has a YouTube channel, and she talks about how it took her a long time to figure out she was an ESTP because she would relate a lot to how intuitives with, like, when she's driving, she's not paying attention when she's driving, and she'll miss stops that she's supposed to be going on because she's thinking. And she's like, that only is attributed to intuitives. So for a long time, she thought she was an intuitive. So these are just things to look out for. They might be more common with intuitives, but, you know, sensors can also heavily relate to. It might be a human phenomenon as well. Who knows? I still have to kind of understand it myself. And so, any last thoughts on SE stereotypes?
Yeah, I got one more. I definitely see that with like SE DOMs, they're more perceptive just of like visually what's around them, and I think it's kind of like over. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but like I could walk in a room and miss a lot of the visual stuff that's going on around for the same reasons, kind of like you're in your head or you're paying more attention to what's going on inside of you with your feelings. So I think that's another thing.
Yeah, and I just want to piggyback off of what Anne said about, like, I am extremely clumsy. Like, my husband laughs at me all the time because I'm always tripping over something or bumping into something. But then on the flip side, like you were saying about your husband, like, literally, he never trips over anything, like, ever. And like, he always took pride in that. And it literally took me years. Like, I would even try to trip him, but he will always catch it. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, I have SCE higher. Like, what are we doing? Recently, like within the past couple years, I've been seeing it a little bit more. I don't know what that's about. But yeah, I am like significantly more clumsy than my husband, and he is an ENFJ. So yeah.
I think they're generally like more uneasy, so they're more careful. I wonder if that's one of the reasons. Whereas if you're more relaxed in the world, you don't care so much, kind of thing.
Yeah, like he'll feel some type of way because of me, because I'm always bumping and stuff. I don't really care. So maybe that could play to it, is that they're kind of like you said, they're like more apprehensive, so they feel like they have to be more careful. I'm like, what's a hit in the face with the door? So
Yeah, and that's hilarious. And that, I mean, your pain isn't hilarious, but the story is hilarious. And so Brady asks, what is the best way to support an ISFP's passion? Time, supplies, interest, space. I want to encourage an ISFP artist without pressuring them.
that's a great
I think
question.
giving an ISFP time is everything. Like, being okay with the fact that the ISFP wants to just go vanish for who knows how long to work on whatever it is they want to work on and do whatever it is that matters to them. And like, I know for me, I don't necessarily need anyone to give me a whole bunch of positive feedback, but I definitely, I mean, I'm not, when I say feedback, I'm fine with like true, caring, constructive criticism. But the moment that I think IPs in general have a tendency to be very leery of being judged, And so I think that if an ISFP presents whatever it is that's important to them to whomever, and that person communicates anything that seems to be, I'm trying to find the right words here, that seems to be really ripping them apart or making them feel ripped apart, then they're just going to go, I'm gone, you know? And that's how I am. I'll say that about myself. Like, I want to be left alone. I want to be, you don't need to necessarily encourage me, but just let me do what I want to do. And whenever I finally come out to you and I'm like, see what I've done or what I've been working on or whatever, you don't have to tell me I'm the most awesome human being in the world. Just don't cut my head off about it.
I would say something you could do would just be to ask them, like, what do you need? I think that a lot of times, at least for me, there can be things that I need I don't feel comfortable enough to express, or I feel too insecure to express. So if you just like, yeah, what do you need? Is it, and like you said, is it times, is it supplies? Like, do you need me to create a space in our little apartment? Or like whatever. I think sometimes ISFPs, because we're so, I guess, kind of untrusting of the external world, then we don't know how to get what we want or express what we want or we need. And so if you kind of take that initiative, be like, I hear you, or I see you, and I notice that, you know, you have this passion, but you're not really like doing anything about it or whatever. I'm here to help you. Just let me know what I can do. And yeah, I think that could be a way to encourage without seeming like you're pressuring them, just asking them what they need. And, you know, just reminding them that you're not judging them if all they really do need is time too. So.
Yeah. There's this element of not wanting to feel judged, I guess, by the people around you. Maybe allowing for your process of going through it. Interesting. And so, what is your experiences with TE DOMs?
I personally don't have a lot of experience with TE DOMs, actually. And the few experiences that I've had have been fine. Not like great, but maybe not as bad as you would think. There's obviously some miscommunication, you know, but yeah, it's not terrible. And I feel like sometimes people's perception of really tertiary functions in general, but let's say TE, for example, of like the stereotype of being like these bulldozer like type of people or whatever. A lot of times that will show up more so in the tertiary because they're like, look at me, I'm strong, I'm big, da 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 da. Whereas I feel like a lot of TE users, they don't really come off as abrasive as like online descriptions may make it seem.
Yeah, I only know them socially, so like they're in like, you know, SE fun mode then. So like, yeah, I only know them as like friends or socially. So I'd like get on really well with them actually. Yeah, I haven't worked with one, so yeah.
I actually really respect their commitment to getting things done and accomplishing things. I mean, there are times when I'm a little jealous or envious of that dedication because I can be like, yeah, I'd really love to see that get done, but I'm just going to be sitting over here, on the couch doing nothing or whatever. So I may not always love the approach, although sometimes I think it's what's needed and good sometimes, but I really respect that about them.
Yeah. That's fascinating. This goes back to our conversation on TE and the inferior slot too. So Anne has told me stories about how she'll have like really productive spurts, and then after it'll be like a long period of kind of like lazing around, and then she'll have a productive spurt again, and then it'll be like lazing around. I think for a few TE inferiors can also relate to that experience as well. So it's like TE, but inconsistent TE. Cool stuff. And so Feel free to tell us your opinions on this question too. I'm just also going to show the other one as well. Alien asks, I find that ISFPs are very adventurous and don't like being stuck in one place for too long. Do you ISFPs relate?
I relate. I think I would consider myself, I think, a little bit more spontaneous than adventurous, but still adventurous too. Yeah, I can get bored and I can just be like, I want to just do something. So yeah, I relate.
What things make you ISFPs bored?
I was just gonna answer the other question first. As far as like, I was gonna say like being stuck in one place doesn't necessarily have to be like a physical place, but like if you're stuck in one place in your life, that could really be frustrating for me. Like you just want to like progress to like the next phase or the next chapter or something. So sorry. What did you ask me for that?
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I wonder if FI DOMs take it particularly harsh because it's almost like when you feel like your identity is stagnant, like you take it more personally. Like if you're not getting anywhere in life and you've been there too long, I find FI DOMs can get very neurotic. At least the INFPs I know, they do about it. And so Sheila's back. I'm gonna let her back in. And so my question for you guys was, what bores you? What is boring to you? How do I bore an ISFP?
Well, I will piggyback off of what Kurt said. I feel like for me, in everyday life, I'm not easily super bored because I can just, watch Netflix all day and be fine. But in just like the grand scheme of like my life, I can be bored, if that makes sense. Also, same with conversation too. Like, generally speaking, most conversations don't bore me. Like, I can kind of be entertained by any conversation just because of the conversation I'm having in my head while the conversation is going. So yeah, I think boredom might more so come from feeling stuck in a place. And I think that there's probably a lot of truth to what you said about the whole, attaching your position in life with your identity. And because it's like, oh, like I'm not going anywhere. I think it kind of connects to the inferior TE. Like I'm not going anywhere. I'm not doing anything. It's like, what's happening? Who am I? If I don't do anything, then I am nothing.
That's intense. Now I just want to hug every ISFP that's going through a TE inferior grip.
I found like when COVID hit last year, I went from working in like a busy office and I managed a team of people, and I was always taking them off for little like individual meetings, group meetings, stuff was always going on. They were coming to me with challenges and problems and stuff. So I didn't see myself as someone that was bored with like an office desk job. But then when COVID hit and we had to work from home and stuff, I realized that like, even though it was nice not having people like ask me stuff all the time, there was like a bit of excitement in that challenge. And just for all like the stuff that was going on around me in the office and stuff, having that layer taken away, I was like going bored out of my mind, sitting at the desk just doing my work all day. And that really surprised me because I didn't realize until I was like put in that situation. Yeah.
Well said. And so Joseph asks, what other types in the function group, SFP, NTJ, do you relate most to?
Well, yeah, I already said that I relate to INTJs and ESFPs the most. I honestly don't really know any ENTJs, so which I really want to, because I think it would be cool. But yeah. And in some ways, actually, I wanted to actually ask this to you all as well, because somebody already asked what other types we related to. Did you all not mention ISFPs because you feel like that's a given, or because you don't relate most to them? I was just curious.
I didn't mention them because I felt like it was a given. I do relate well to ISFPs.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know too many ISFPs like in my close personal life. And I would say I do relate, but at the same time, it's one of those things where you're almost like seeing yourself from a different angle. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that's how I probably come across to everybody else all the time. Like even just in this video, I noticed that we all are pretty like, when a question is asked, we're all like stopping and thinking about it before we say anything. You know, and it's like, I don't know, I guess you just don't think of that, how other people see you and in that kind of a way, I guess. So yeah, I would say I think I relate to other ISFPs, but I don't know too many that like I've actually been close with.
Cool stuff. And so Crisis Alert asks, what are your favorite types of gifts? Thoughtful, utilitarian, unexperienced? Perhaps you can give us the example of your favorite gift.
I think experiences are huge for me, but also anything that's in my wheelhouse of just what I like. So whatever that may be, right? Big Star Wars fan, you give me something Star Wars related, and I'm probably like, oh, this is great. I love this. But I will find, funny enough, like some of my favorite gifts, I don't realize they're my favorite gifts until like months later when I figure out how utilitarian they are. At the time that I get it, it's like, oh, that's nice. So honestly, my ESTJ sister-in-law that I mentioned earlier, she gave me a gift for Christmas. I think it was like 2 Christmases ago. And like, I don't know, a few months ago, my wife was going to see her sister-in-law, her sister. And I was like, hey, tell her how much I loved that gift because it's totally practical. Right. So at the time I was like, oh, that's great. I'm sure this will be great. But now 2 years later or a year and a half later, I'm like, man, I love this. This is fantastic because it's practical.
That's lovely. The tea of it sinks in after a while.
Yeah.
Cool stuff. How about Jamila?
Yeah, I would say thoughtful and experiential as well. Things that are like, oh, I can tell that you're paying attention to me and what I like, and things that I might have said in passing. And you're like, yeah. And experiential too. Kind of going back to the SE stereotype thing, I think, yeah, like most stereotypical SE things or experiences, I would love as a gift. I think that would be really cool and really fun. And my mother is an ISTJ, and so growing up, we just always got super practical gifts like socks. And I got a hammer last year, I think, and I'm like, okay, but I just used it because we were moving this week, and I was like, wow, I'm glad I got this hammer. So yeah.
That's really funny. And so, Kurt?
Yeah, I would say probably like a thoughtful gift, just like Jamila said, something that shows that, I guess, like to me, that kind of displays that someone actually cares because they're paying attention enough to be able to give you a gift that's thoughtful, something that they know you'll like. Because on one hand, it does feel like it should be obvious what we like as ISFP.
Yeah. Oh, I will say For me, you know, personalized gifts are kind of a hit or miss. Like, I don't really need you like making like random things from things you found around your house. Like, because I know some people really like personalized things like, oh, you know, I didn't spend a lot of money because it just came from the heart. And that is not really like my thing. Like, give me something that I actually will like and will use, not just because you made it, because that doesn't appeal to me.
Is it like noticing when a gift is totally not tailored towards you? So they might have made it, but it totally isn't of anything you like. It's like it's not any franchise that you like, or it's not like anything you need practically. And it's like, wow, you really just gave me a blanket type of gift. It's like a gift you could have given anyone.
Yeah, I think that's it. But also, I feel like there are people out there that are like, oh, don't get me anything. Like, you know, just make it from the heart. And it's like, if you do that, just do it with the intent of appealing to something you know for a fact that I like and or could use, not just for the sake of, you know, I made this card. Like, I don't need a card. If you know what I mean? So
That's lovely. And so, question for the panel. Do you relate to the whole good spatial awareness, balance, aim idea of composition?
I do, and I didn't realize how much I did until I found out my type. Like, I used to think that I was kind of like clueless, but like yeah, I found that, you know, like if I'm out walking and stuff, like even if I'm daydreaming, even if I'm in a conversation with somebody else, like part of my mind is always like tracking what's going on, and you know, like I'll never accidentally like block a pathway or something like that. I'm always like navigating that in my head almost unconsciously. And kind of like body language as well. I never used to think I was reading body language, and then I found out that like I'm reading it and adjusting my own all the time. I just didn't know I was. And I think, I don't know, maybe it's like a bit different with like ISTPs and ESTPs. They seem to like know what they're reading. They know like the little degrees and how to pinpoint it. But and I used to think that's what reading it was. But like I realized that it's kind of like it almost doesn't have language. It's just kind of there happening. And then with like the composition, like how things visually look and stuff, yeah, I would say I relate to that as well. Yeah.
How about you, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm keenly aware of my environment and my surroundings at all time. I hear every noise, I see everything that goes on, but I don't hang on to it. Like, I just hang on to the highlights. So like, if you asked me an hour later about something that I experienced, I would only be able to remember the real highlights. Like, oh, there was this, you know, really cool blue Camaro that drove by at that moment. And you might ask me a million questions about all the other surroundings. In the moment, I was aware of them, but I don't retain a lot of them. Just the ones that really struck me as, you know, some big important thing in my mind for who knows what reason.
Makes sense. And Jamila?
Yeah, I think, you know, I'm aware. I'm not really sure what idea of composition means.
Maybe the symmetry of something. So if someone's face looks a little not proportional to the other side of their face, I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think I noticed things like that then.
Yeah, and I took it to mean things like, you know, like when some things like clash but in a good way color-wise maybe, and some things clash but in a bad way, and some people don't know the difference between those things, kinda. That's like how I took that bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think the only thing I don't really relate to, which we did kind of address earlier, is like balance. And yeah, I think I'm pretty good at spatial awareness, but yeah, I'm pretty clumsy and bump into things all the time. So, well, that might not be spatial awareness then.
That makes sense. How about you, Kurt?
Yeah, I think I relate to it, like in the sense of you kind of just have like an eye for things that look good or don't look good. I'm just thinking like in the realm of like design. Like sometimes I could be in someone's house and I'll be like, that picture needs to move over a little bit. It's just like doesn't look balanced, you know, or like things like fashion. Even like I'm not really interested in fashion, but I feel like I have a good eye for like proportions of things and like what looks right versus what doesn't look right. So in that sense, I think, yeah.
Oh, I wish I could bring you ISFPs around with me while I'm shopping and go like, does this suit me? Does it not? I sometimes feel like FI people know me better than I know myself. Like Jamila, when we were making the cover art for the Knife Show, so it's a series that I have with me and her husband. And Jamila, we were looking for artists, and then Jamila's like, you know what? That artist, when they draw, it doesn't look like you guys. And then me and Denzel were looking at each other. We're like, what looks like us? Like, we don't even know what style like is us. But Jamila knows what style we are more than we do, which is amazing. And so Alien asks, how do ISFPs relate to the Enneagram?
Well, to my knowledge, ISFPs are normally 9s and 4s. If that's what maybe I don't understand the question. But.
Yeah, I guess it's a vague question. How would you approach that? I think that there can be variations of ISFP outside of 9 and 4 too, but the trend tends to go there, definitely. Like a majority will relate to 4 or 9.
Yeah, like I'm a 4 myself.
Yeah. Actually, how I figured out Jason was I had a ESFP friend message me and go like, hey, there's this really amazing YouTube channel with this ISFP, because I know you're looking for ISFPs. And I think that he's a type 1. So I don't know if you personally identify as a type 1 or if my friend just inferred that you were a 1.
So I took I know like about as much about Enneagram as I know about like flying a space shuttle. So I apologize that I'm not qualified to really talk about this, but I did take an Enneagram test online. Who knows if it was a good one or not? I have no idea. And I printed the results and I did a little video on them. And I just kind of read all the things that it said and went like, okay, I relate to that. I don't that or whatever. But I don't honestly even remember what the number was that it assigned to me. So I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form to like say anything negative about Enneagram or say I don't agree with it. I'm not judging it. I'm not making any statement on it. I'm just saying I'm unknowledgeable.
Yeah, and for sure. Totally cool. And
Yeah.
so,
sorry.
yeah, and you can go. Sorry.
I was going to say, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm a 4. I relate to that quite a lot. It's just a case of figuring out which one. And then I relate to like maybe having a 3 wing. There's kind of like an achievement like side to me. But yeah, that's it.
Cool beans. And so Power Red Bull asks, if you believe in self-transformation, then is the other part that remains the same the real you, or the part that has transformed?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know.
I have some thoughts on this as far as like the perceiving axes, like how do I even describe this? Like I feel like there's a pattern with SENI where you kind of perceive yourself to change more over time, and people that have on the other axis with SI, sorry, I feel like they tend to like hold on to the different SI like fragments of themselves
So I feel like they don't see themselves as changing as much. Like, yes, they grow, but the old parts and the old experiences are always a part of them. Whereas I feel like people with SE and NI, you see progression more and change more as like, I don't relate to that old part of myself anymore. So I think that answered the question. Like, it was always you, but now you've grown. So I feel like, I don't know if that makes
It's
sense.
like an evolution. It's more like an evolution. So like you're still, you're just an evolved you. It's not like their old version of you still there, but then there's like some new sprinkled on top or what have you. It's kind of like the whole you has entered a new phase. And things have been built upon.
Yeah, I feel it's like the present you is always the real you, even if that's changing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I feel like if any parts of me, like, die, they're kind of like unimportant external things that maybe I identified with for a while. They can just go, kind of thing, but the important things like stay or transform. Yeah.
This is really fascinating.
I also am just thinking about, like, with FI, we were talking earlier about this, but just like, what could, like, if your mind changed over time, what you believed and thought was authentic to you at the time, but with new information that you take in, your perspectives could change, and it doesn't mean it's not authentically you anymore. So I see like almost all the functions like playing a role.
Yeah. And
I feel like even, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you can go, Jason.
I feel like even when I change, who I was is still in some way, shape, or form a part of who I am, because I couldn't be who I am now if I hadn't been who I was at that time.
That's really beautiful. And so Anne has a little story around this. I'm so sorry for singling you out. I just know the most about you, so it's easier. And you mentioned before about how if I were to introduce you on Type Talks and you were to change your identity eventually, it'd be weird to hear you talking about yourself, but it's not the you that you currently identify with, so it's a little weird. I'm not explaining this perfectly. And could you go a little bit into that?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. But like, to be honest, that isn't like, I was thinking of some of like the silly, shallow external stuff. So I used to be really into rock climbing. So like, if I'd like been on Type Talks, if it existed a few years ago, and when I was rock climbing, and now I'm not, and you introduced me as a rock climber, like, part of me really want to say something, because be like, Joyce, I'm not a rock climber, but it's silly at the same time, so I probably wouldn't say anything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would still be sister, yeah.
Anne, can I ask you a question in regards to that? Do you, in your mind, even though maybe, let's say you haven't done rock climbing in a certain amount of time, do you still consider yourself, though, a rock climber? Like, is that still part of who you are?
Not really, because I kind of like we moved away from the place we used to climb, and I just kind of just like cut that off as part of like something I did before and don't really do anymore. And I've been back and tried like climbing a few times since, and it's just kind of like a fun thing that like I occasionally do. But back then it was like a big part of my identity, and it was really important for me to try and like progress. There's like, I don't know, I was into like the whole sort of mindset and culture of like, like, I don't know, like the people that go there, like, I can't even explain it, but there was I guess there was like a vibe or a scene, and I was very much like into that, and that's not me now. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. There's this phrase I hear some FI users say, and it's like dead to me. It's when Anne will talk about her identity, she'll say, now that part is dead to me. I'll even have some FI users talking about past friends or lovers that they've had before too. It's like, at one point, this person was really important to me and maybe a part of my identity, but now they're dead to me. Specifically, like ESFPs I've had talk to me, they're like, I've burnt the bridge and now they're dead to me. And that's the type of phrasing they'll use. And I still have to understand it, but that's definitely like a trend that I see.
Yeah, I saw this video once of a lobster shedding like its exoskeleton shell, whatever, and it was so fascinating to me. And like as soon as I saw that process, it just kind of like, you know, it was like it just kind of popped out of its shell, and there it is. That's what made me think of this, like leaving parts of yourself behind. And it's like, yeah, that was you. It's like, it looks, that's what you look like, you know. But there's something of that, like there's something of a transformation, I guess, that happens where you just don't identify with that, or those aspects, or those beliefs, or the, you know, the person you were, or whatever, however you would describe that. So that's like my analogy for it.
Yeah, I've actually like used the like shedding it like layers of snakeskin before, so it's like the same kind of like concept. Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe a phoenix that burns and then turns to ashes and then creates a new phoenix from that. Cool. And so how do you relate to SI? This might be kind of controversial, but in socionics, they have a different understanding of how the ISTP and the ISFP use SI than traditional MBTI. And I think they might be onto something in some way too, you know, because for some ISFPs, they might be really into SE, right? But for others, and for some ISTPs I know, like I'll have some ISTP friends who say that they originally mistyped as INTP because they related to SI and E, but that was because they can be kind of like homebodies. They can be kind of SI, what people would consider in a familiar environment a lot, or like doing things that look a little routinized, but it's not, but it's something similar. Like it can on the surface appear like that. So for a period of time, they thought they were INTP. And I find this to be the case with some ISTPs or some ISFPs. Like they're not as adventurous as you think that they are. They're mostly kind of like, they're introverts too, right? They're not always going to be dipping their toe in the external world all the time. Like they're not going to always be like boom, boom, boom outside world. So it can look a little bit like SI, just them being introverts and kind of spending maybe life at home, or kind of doing something that looks kind of like they're settling into a pond rather than exploring every inch of the world. Does that make sense?
I think for me, the degree to which SI drives a person to being very rigid, and it doesn't have to do that, but the degree to which it does makes it more hard for me to relate, because I like to live a very free flowing, I don't want to be locked into too many things kind of life, you know. I like very options open kind of life. And so anything that sort of feels stifling is difficult for me. SI doesn't always have to be that way, but when it comes off that way, I bristle hard against that. I mean, if you're talking about SI in other people, as I'm assuming that that's what the question is asking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. SI is tricky for me because I definitely appreciate it. And like, so one of my best friends is an ISFJ, and like, she'll like help me with my taxes and everything. Like, I don't understand all that type of stuff. And it's like funny because I think some things that can be like SI stereotypes, like the stereotypical like housewife or whatever, the cooking and cleaning and stuff like that, like I don't relate to, or like the moment I think I do, I realize that I don't, because I come in contact with an SJ and I'm like, wow, I just, once again, I can't relate. It's very rare though that yeah, it's very rare though that I meet an SJ and I'm just like bothered by their SI-ness. So yeah, I think I appreciate it for them, but for me, it's just I don't relate to it much. I do like some of the traditionalism that comes with SI. I think that is important in a lot of ways and can in a lot of ways establish a sense of continuity and even like community within a group. Just kind of having those traditions and stuff like that. But yeah, as far as like details and like documents and even like history, I don't get it. Like my mind just doesn't keep track of data in that regard.
Cool stuff.
I feel a little different when it comes to like traditions. I actually feel like for me, traditions are something that can be a little stifling or a little bit boring to me, because I feel like even if it's like just a once a year thing, I feel like we just did like it feels like I'm reliving the same exact moment.
You're like, not again.
But I have a theory that maybe SI likes to relive the same moments in some way.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I don't relate to that aspect of SI. It's kind of like what you said earlier, Joyce, when you were talking about how Sheila will mow her lawn a little bit different every time. Yeah, and I kind of wish that I enjoyed routines and could utilize routines as a tool. I really have a hard time with that.
Yeah, routines are tricky for sure.
For sure. Agreed. And so if no one else wants to answer this question, I will move on to the next one. At times, I feel like my ISFP friends are more spontaneous than I am, texting me asking if I wanted to travel to another state just cuz. Haha, is Wanderlust strong with ISFPs?
I think I could say yes, but obviously I wouldn't confidently be like, oh, most or like all ISFPs are like that. I think like Joyce was saying, you'll have some ISFPs who are more chill, more like homebody types. But yeah, I'm not surprised by that at all. I think Wanderlust is a thing for ISFPs. I think that it just comes out in different ways. Sometimes it literally is like, oh, let's get on a plane tomorrow. Other times it's like, oh, let's just go to this painting class. Or other times it's like, oh, let's just go to the mountains and look at the sunrise or something like that. So I think it has different variations, but I think Wanderlust is still kind of a theme among ISFPs in some respect.
Yeah, kind of connecting it to the last question as well. Like, even if we go to a place that we really like, I very rarely want to go back again. Yeah, and that happens with both me and my husband quite a bit, I guess, because neither of us has got SI. It's kind of like once you've been there and done it, like I want to go on to like the next thing. And sometimes like we've like been to a place that's just been lovely and said, oh yeah, we should come back here, and then we've kind of like looked at each other and it's like, yeah, we're not coming back here kind of thing. Yeah, because we know, not because it's not nice, but we know that when it comes down to it, we'll pick somewhere new to travel that we haven't been to before. Yeah.
I definitely think we have a good measure of wanderlust, but I also think the spontaneity is born a lot out of just sort of an introverted feeling. I just woke up this morning and all of a sudden I just felt like I wanted to whatever. And, if you'd asked me this 10 minutes ago or an hour ago or yesterday, I would have had no clue that that's what I wanted to do today. But today I woke up and I wanted to go hike in the woods. So all of a sudden I might be, if you're my friend, I might be texting you going, hey, want to go hike in the woods? And you might be like, where the heck did that come from?
Yeah.
And I don't know where it came from. It just happened.
Definitely. And this is where the FI works with the extroverted perceiving process. So the FI is like, I'm feeling like this today. And then the extroverted perceiving process is flexible enough to adapt to the in the moment changes to the FI desires. Cool stuff. And so I was wondering, I'm trying to look for more comments, but it's like the side chat is roaring, and it's amazing that it's generating so much conversation. How do you guys manage to be productive?
To-do lists. I have to have to-do lists personally. Even then, I don't really complete them. But if I didn't have a to-do list, nothing would get done. So that's like the main thing for me, I think.
Yeah, I found in my job that I would just lose things, as in like tasks. Like if I didn't write them down, I'd just lose them and forget them unless there was something keeping them in my mind for some reason.
Mhm.
Yeah. I've relied on last minute stress like way too much. Like I've had deadlines and things like like with one of the personality hacker courses that I did, I booked off time from work to complete it so that I wouldn't have to rush at the last minute. And I used those days just doing like random fun stuff. And then I just had the last minute stress, and it was like insane. So I'm always trying to find ways of not doing that, because there was like a weekend when I had to hand in the work, and the weekend just went by in a blur because like I wasn't eating or sleeping properly because I was like at the computer for like 14 hours straight writing up all this work that like I had to hand in. So it's not good. I saw an SE tip somewhere though that was like, if you see something, do it straight away. So I try that one as well. But yeah, I'm always bad though.
Kurt, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say that like in general, I'm just not that productive, and I kind of, I think over time I just tried my best to like automate as many things as possible, like automatic bill paying and stuff like that, to sort of, manage the fact that I'm just not that productive. But I also agree that if I have to be, then like having a list just really keeps you on track and just gives you that little bit of structure to make sure that you're doing what you need to.
Yeah, that's a great life hack. To-do lists. But if your FI's not feeling it, you won't finish it.
It's true.
Something that I've been trying recently, that because it's recent, I'm still trying to figure out how much it helps, is instead of like I would have this whole to-do list for the week of things to do throughout the week, but then the week is over and I still have not done everything because certain things have taken more time or because life happens or whatever. So now what I've been trying to do is actually dedicate certain days to certain kinds of tasks. So like instead of going weeks without paying, like writing or singing or practicing, I was like, okay, I have a specific date for that, so I have no excuse, or a specific day for what I call adulting and like handling those types of things instead of putting it off, and then the week is done. So yeah, that's what I've been trying to do.
That's really excellent. Any final thoughts before we end off the panel?
I actually have a question in regards to this last question because of something you said, Anne. How do y'all feel about doing things last minute? Like, are y'all good under pressure, or is it kind of like, not really helpful at all?
I feel like I've lived my entire life in a deadline-induced panic. And I do, I've always gotten away with it, I guess. So, at times in my life I've gotten burned, and it was the experience of getting burned that helped me not to do it as much, but I made it all through school, college, everything that way. And because I never really got burned until I got in the work environment, I just fell into that habit. And I guess
Oh
You're
no.
frozen.
Nice.
I was waiting for a TE tip then, yeah.
You see, all of us are tech impaired, so I have no advice to offer on how to fix this. But that was a really good point while it lasted. Yeah. And so thank you everyone for, oh, Jason, he's coming back. Hi.
Are you on mute?
You're muted now.
Did I disappear?
Yeah.
My screen went black for a while, so I don't know what you heard me say, but anyway. Yes, I'm typically good under pressure. No, I really don't want to live that way, but yet I find myself doing it all the same.
Cool. How about Kurt and Anne? And Jamila, how would you answer your own question?
I find it's sort of like a sometimes I notice that I'll wait for that, like I'll procrastinate because I know that the closer I get to the deadline, the more motivation that will give me to actually do it. I forget the whole entire question. I'm sorry.
No, that was pretty much it. I was just wondering how, well you are with pressure, working under pressure, last minute, that type of thing.
I try and tell myself that like future me will thank me if I do it now. But then like, I don't know, I still struggle to follow through with it. And then when I get to that thing where everything needs doing that one day, I'm like, oh, future me is now, yeah. Like, why can't I just like learn this lesson? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I'm like trying this whole like day thing. So that way I'm not like looking at this super long to-do list. You know what I mean? For the whole week. It's like, okay, no, I just have to accomplish these 3 tasks today instead of like, oh, I have all these tasks to do. I'm gonna just do one. Or I have all these tasks to do. I'm gonna try to do all of them. And then the results are still the same. But yeah, no, I'm not good under pressure either, but similar to Jason, that doesn't really stop me from procrastinating. Even though I've gotten a lot better throughout the years, for sure. And I've learned to pace myself and manage my energy a lot better. But yeah, it's definitely tempting.
I feel like the desire is to like ride the line, like just exactly where it's like prepare enough so that you're not like totally stressing out, but also procrastinate enough so that,
Yeah.
That's beautiful. We know your insider mind now when it comes to deadlines. And so thank you, ISFPs, for coming out and showing the world your genuine, authentic self. This type doesn't get a lot of representation in the space. So I'm really glad that, Jason, you're able to make YouTube videos that are very accurate on the ISFP personality. And you understand the functions so well, like so superbly well, that I'm very impressed by your explanation in your videos. They're superb, like absolutely superb. So yeah, I'll have Jason's YouTube channel linked below. And so go check it out if you'd like. And it'll be awesome. As well, Jamila has the voice of a living angel. She makes my heart soar. And, and when I listen to her beautiful melodies, they make the world feel like everything is right in the world for one moment in time. So if you want to feel that sensation, also head over to Jamila's channel to check out her songs and listen to her sing and help her blow up her channel, because TE inferiors need help with kind of moving things along in their little TE journeys. So you'll also be helping her with her TE too. So 2 in 1. Yeah. And thank you, Anne, for always conducting typing sessions with me and trying to arrive at people's types. It's really fun. And you're a really easy person to also type people with. You make me feel at home like typing with another feeler. We did one just earlier now, like today, and I always feel like no matter what result we end up with, everything seems right in the world. I don't know. So ISFPs, the trend is their chillness makes me feel like everything is right in the world. Yeah, and Kurt, oh, you have a gentle spiritness to you. I don't know what it is, just the way that you speak. I can tell that you're speaking from your heart, and I can trust that what you're saying is real. You're a very real person. And there have been times when we've been in conversations before and you've offered to let me open up to you. And you're like, you know, whatever you want to share, Joyce, I'm cool with listening to it. So I felt like you instantly create this psychologically safe space for people to have deeper conversations than how are you? Like you are able to take how are you to a deeper length. Like you actually want to know what's going on with people's lives, which is refreshing because people always want to be real. They just don't have a person to be real with. And so it's nice that you provide that outlet for people. And so thank you, live chat, for coming to this video and asking your questions. It was really fun hearing your thoughts and what you'd like to hear from ISFPs. It is amazing to have this collaboration where we not only get to collaborate with the ISFPs in the community, but also all of you as well. And yeah, I'm going to head off to a typing session that I have scheduled right at 5 p.m. So right now. So yeah, thank you people for also supporting through typing sessions. It helps pay rent and make sure that I have food. So I appreciate that. And so thank you everyone for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.
Thanks.
Bye.